Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Ultra Hardware number 44128 light commercial cylindrical ball lock set. This is a cylindrical type lock, and this is what would be termed a grade 3 lock. And grade 3 would be the lightest grade tested and given the recognition or the certification applied or associated with the part number that it has passed a grade 3 test, which there are criteria on how much force it will take to turn the knob before you break it, how much pull strength the latch bolt has itself. But the summary of grade 3 is 250,000 cycles. So this has been tested to at least 250,000 cycles. If they went further, who knows? But 250,000 is grade 3. 500,000 is grade 2. 1 million is grade 1. This is a grade 3 lock. Locks like this are really great little locks. They are easy to install. They're reliable. This would be really decent to use on an application where a knob would be appropriate. Obviously not handicap accessibility required type applications. I see these locks in doors to storerooms. Public access never applied, applicable. It's an inexpensive lock that's going to work well, that it's very capable, and quite frankly, I would have no hesitation about using this sort of lock in an instance when you have adult usage where you don't expect any vandalism at all. Okay, this lock can't be rebuilt. There are no available parts. We might be able to get through the latch bolt, but other than that, there's not going to be anything that you'd be able to get with it. So this type of lock is a cylindrical lock, and that is a reference to the construction. The latch bolt fits into the center of the hub or the chassis, and you install this lock by depressing a tool down into that spring-loaded tab and pulling the knob off. Now you'll take note the way that the keys are inserted. If you're going to insert them with the teeth up, which would be best practice, this lock is going to either work on a right-hand door or it's going to work on a left-hand reverse door. If you're going to flip it around, there may be there are not instructions on how to reverse the... Oh, forgive me, there are. Step 9. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll go over how to reverse that. It's simple and straightforward. Let's take a visual tour of everything else. You're going to get a latch bolt. What's nice about this latch bolt is that it is a universal back set in the sense of it being 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. There are other back sets that exist in the world, but 2 3/8 and 2 3/4 would of course be the typical and common. This is going to be a 2 1/4 inch tall by 1 inch wide faceplate. Be mindful if you're going into a commercial door, which are typically inch and 1/8 wide, that may not fit the bill. The strike with this is also going to be a non-standard for commercial application. This is a T-strike. This can certainly work very well in wood frame applications. If you have a hollow metal frame, you're going to need to buy ASA strikes or the 4 7/8 strikes. This is a 2 3/4 strike. We call them T-strikes. If you use your imagination, you can see why we call it a T-strike. And this will be 2 1/4. Pardon me, 2 3/4. A full lip strike is 2 1/4. 2 3/4. The overall width is about 1.5 inches. Strikes are actually measured from the vertical center line of the holes to the edge of the lip, and this is about 1 inch. Okay. Now, what I like about this strike plate is that it is a very short lip, and that's advantageous in instances when you don't need an extended lip hanging off of your strike. So the center line of the screw holes to the edge of the lip, it's about 1 inch. A standard strike is really about 1 3/16 inches, 1 1/4. So be mindful that this is just coming out 1 inch. it may not be long enough for your application, so be mindful of that. Ultra can certainly supply us with I am looking for the T-strike. I was just looking for it's in my hand. Ultra can certainly supply you with the 4 7/8 strike. They can certainly supply you with I don't think that there are any options on this latch bolt. And be mindful that these are kind of a polished chrome, maybe a unichrome. And this is definitely stainless steel color. They say that the finish is stainless. I'm going to say that this has got a stainless finish on it. There's nothing really in that knob to attract that much magnetism. And I'm going to have to say that it's steel. But it's, hey, listen, it's a grade 3, low end, low cost, good quality, a confluence of value. Knob lock is what it is. You're going to get a dust box with your strike. That is really handy because that's going to it's going to fit in behind your installation so that you can make a very nice clean installation. You don't want the wall material, the particulate of your wall, creeping into your living space or the space that you're occupying. So dust boxes are really great to have. You'll want to install it in all instances is what you'd want to do. Other items that you're going to get in the box, you're going to get the spanner tool. It's a spanner wrench, which you do need with this lock. And then you get this little ejector tool. You're going to want to save this little piece of, zinc dichromate plated steel. Then you're going to get screws. There's going to be a total of 6. There's going to be 2 for the lock, 2 for the strike, 2 for the latch. Very simple and straightforward. Okay. Now, there is a link below this video to the installation instructions. Let's take a quick tour of this lock. First of all, your little tool. You're going to obviously need to be able to remove the interior trim to operate this lock. I'm going to tell you up front that sometimes, that most often, low-end, inexpensive imported locks are at times a challenge to work with. They don't fit together nice as you would like to have. They don't always come apart predictably. Sometimes it seems that you have to learn the personality of the lock in order for it to work well. It does apply. You get what you pay for. If you need a lock that's going to operate at a level where you're going to have thousands of uses a day, you have to buy the right lock. Those locks are going to be manufactured to lower tolerances, or may do a very tight tolerance. One thing I do like about this lock is when you push the button in, I've now made rigid my outside trim. Okay, this does not work the way in which I had hoped. You have to be mindful that when the button is pressed, you can open the door. Let's say that you're on the inside of a door that you have this outside locked. You turn the knob, the button pops out. You turn the knob, the button pops out. You can now get in, you can leave. If you were to then, with the door ajar, push the button and then close the door, latch bolt gets depressed, you're still locked on the outside. That is a hallmark of standard caliber lock, so be mindful of that. I was hoping that it depressed, but it does not, and that's because the action of how the retracting plate, that item, does not get depressed when the latch bolt is pushed in. So these regular caliber locks don't operate that way. And if you need to have that functionality, you'll want to look at a different lock. Applications for that sort of function is any sort of establishment that you go into and you need a key or a code to get into the bathroom. You're going to want to think about, somebody pushing the button, pulling the door closed, knowingly locking out whoever is going to come in next. and you'll want to work on a lock or work towards a lock that will give you that functionality. We'll just continue on with reversing the exterior side. Okay, yeah, these locks are not a joy to work on because you need to turn the knob so that you expose the tab, and you also need to have the key turned as well. So I've got the tab exposed, and then I need to have the key turned, which is no problem because there's no, the retractor is retracted, so there's nothing for the key to actually have to retract. So it's just setting it into an unlocked position. When you get the tool down in there, you'll be able to depress that tab and then pull the lock apart. Now, the reason that you're and you don't need to remove the cylinder if you're just reversing the hand. I'm going to remove the cylinder so I can demonstrate a function of why that tab works. There are a few locks in the world that you can just remove the outside knob and ultimately the cylinder without the key. Those locks are out there and they do exist. This lock's not going to work that way. It won't have that sort of flaw. You can tell this tool's good for more than just popping your knobs off. So you can see that there's a plus sign down in there. That is made for the cylinder to go in really either way. This chassis is only made for it to go in one way, so the tailpiece is horizontal. Tailpiece goes in. It's all the way in. Okay, this is going to work just fine. Okay, now this tab, that is that C-clip, and the head of the tab is right here. When I rotate the trim, I can then get to the head of the tab. Okay. Remember that the tailpiece goes in horizontal. That C-clip sits like this. Now, if you'll just study that picture, because I'm going to put the lock down in your mind's eye. The C-clip goes like, well, it's actually this way, right? C-clip goes like this. My tailpiece goes like this. You can't push the tab in because the C-clip bottoms out on the tailpiece. But when I turn the key, or in this case, I turn the knob, I'm actually turning it like this. And then the C-clip has enough room to be depressed, allowing you to pull the trim off. That's why those work. This was set up, I think we demonstrated as a right hand or a right hand reverse. So we'll put it back together to do a left hand. So your cylinder is going to go back in. There's really only one way for it to go in. You want that cylinder, the face of the cylinder, to sit into the plug itself, or into the hole in the knob. This inner rosette does not need to fit anyway. It's not handed. You're just going to get it on and push it all the way down so that it's seated. And that will, for all intents and purposes, keep the cylinder from literally just falling out, but it will still move. So I use my finger on the back of that tailpiece to keep the cylinder where it needs to go. Otherwise, it'll just move in on me. Okay, I'll insert the key. Now, I can use now the key as a handle, basically, and especially if I turn it ever so slightly. So you have to realize that, okay, my teeth are up. How am I going to put this back together? Well, if I put it back together with the hub on this side, it's going to go back the same way that we previously had it. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll just turn it over. Now we have it on the opposite side. Okay? Now this lock is going to be either a left hand or a left hand reverse. So you're going to get that kind of seated down there to as far as it'll go. And then at this point, you're going to rotate the knob so that you can get access to that tab again. And you will need to rotate the key to get it out of the way. I just put a little bit of turn on that key to press that, and at the same time try to push it down. And at that point, I've got it pushed down, and then I can just finish the installation by pushing it all the way down. And what's absolutely crucial is that you double check and make sure that everything's correct. So I got that knob pushed back down. The key certainly works it, but what did I do? I turned the key in the opposite direction of what it needed to be done. So now it's not going to work properly. I'll be able to get the lock off. That's not a problem. But I've got to take it back apart. Turn that key the opposite direction. Rotate the knob so you make sure that it's locked in place, okay? And always tug on it. Literally try to, you know, gingerly pull it off. You want to make sure that it's seated. I turned that key in the opposite direction, and now I'm in good shape. But what did I do? I put it back together the same way I had it before, okay? So now you can see where this is going. You can put these locks back together many ways so that they're not right. Okay, but the fact of the matter is you can just simply continue to rework the process as I have to get it exactly the way that you want. And you do indeed want the cuts on the key pointed towards the top because that is considered best practice. But there's actually some science to it, meaning the springs that hold everything together are in the top portion of the plug of the cylinder housing, or the cylinder. That's called the Bible, by the way. And you want those pins pushing your springs down. In applications where the teeth are pointed down, that means your springs are sitting here with weight on top of them. And it is known that that spring will fatigue with time, so you definitely do not want to cause yourself trouble in the event of having a fatigued spring, because it does happen, and it can happen. Just be mindful of that. So what I did this time was I simply rotated the key the opposite direction. Okay. The last time I rotated it too far. So now my knob is secured on, my key works, it retracts the latch, and now I'm set up for the opposite hand. The bottom line is, if you're new to doing this, some people call and say, I just can't figure it out. Other people get to a point where they say, oh, I've done it wrong for an hour, and they do finally get it. But the point of the matter is you do have to study, how does the lock work, and how does it need to go back together, and understanding the tailpiece and the clip principle, that it's got to be rotated in order for it to free room to depress the seat, the retaining tab, is the understanding of how all that works. So there is a link below this video to the installation instructions. Page 2 is the latch assembly, and let's just tackle that right now. This is going to work on a 2 3/4 or 2 3/8 situation. Rotate it, push, rotate it, pull. No, this is now set to 2 3/4. Nowhere on here will you measure 2 3/4. Because 2 3/4 is the dimension from the center line of the thickness of the door, from the edge of that point to the center of the hole. This is really going to measure about 2 inches to the end of the latch bolt. Okay. 2 3/8 is going to be about 1.5 inches in that range. Okay. So that's page 2. Let's look at page 1. They're going to talk, and there is no template included with this. They show a template in step 1. You're going to need to drill your 2 1/8 inch hole. You're going to need to have a crossbore, pardon me, you're going to need to have a 2 1/8 inch hole at either 2 3/8 or 2 3/4 back set. You're going to need a 1 inch hole in the edge of the door. Yeah, that'll need to be 1 inch. I like to use, for the 2 1/8 inch hole, a hole saw of all things, because it will permit, it's an inexpensive tool. You can get a high quality bi-metal hole saw that will work well with wood, and it will work well with steel. Even though I don't generally mix the two, I don't want any metal shavings micro metal shavings on my hole saw if I'm going to put it on a wood door. They're inexpensive, they're reliable, they're predictable. You can cut into a wood door very successfully. I have done it thousands of times. And what's nice about the hole saw is that when you're moving into the work, you immediately know if your hole is straight because the circumference of the hole saw is either going to sit flat or it isn't, but you correct immediately and then you start drilling straight. So it keeps you basically honest. It's hard to drill a crooked hole with a hole saw. I would always drill to the point where my arbor would breach the other side. Then I'd come around and finish the hole, pop out the core that's left on the inside of the hole saw, and then you're done. The hole in the edge, I like a 1-inch fly bit. Super inexpensive, super effective. They do Bosch, which we sell. They make fly bits that have these small wing cutters so that you score the outside of the hole before you start cutting in. Great tool, cheap, and does a professional job. So, prepping your hole for the door. I'm not going to read those installation instructions. Step 3 is showing fitting the strike. Yeah, you're going to have to mortise that. Step 4 is removing the inside trim. Well, we demonstrated that for sure. Any adjustment that you're going to need to make for the center line of your door, of your thickness, because this will work on 1 3/8 to 1 3/4 thick doors. At least I believe it will. Yeah, it will. So, both roses are threaded. Okay. What you're going to need is get the latch bolt installed first. This will go in first. Be sure to pre-drill your holes before running the screws. You don't want to split the edge of the door. I would get that turned out to a point where I had it balanced, and I'm going to want to make sure that the latch bolt's going to be in the center of the hub. And you're going to see that as you bring this in, and you're going to be able to see it basically from the opposite side. You'll be able to know if it's in the right place or not. Once you've got this adjusted correctly, you'll then bring your mounting plate, and that will be the 2 longer machine screws. That's going to go right into those tapped holes that are at 12 and 6. Then at that point, your interior rose is threaded. That will go on. Be careful not to cross-thread it. You'll thread that down. You'll make sure both sides are balanced. At that point, it's a simple matter of popping the knob back on. That spring-loaded tab will always work because why? Well, there's no tailpiece. There's no cylinder. There's no tailpiece. That will go on. Line up the slot with where the tab does reside. You're going to carefully push it down. This lock has a dimple on the backside and a channel or a slot for it to ride in, so it's easy to get that right. But don't force it. It will just push on. You don't have to just push it on like that. You can depress the tab a little bit, but it will just push on. Okay. Installing lock, step 6. Backset latch prongs must be connected correctly when installing the lock to ensure lock functions correctly. Make sure housing engages with latch prongs and retractor interlocks with latch bolt as shown. Yeah, indeed. There's certainly no question about that. Latch bolt's in the door. You're going to bring the chassis. That needs to engage. There really is no other way for this to be installed. These flared out areas, the slot that is in these retracting tabs needs to engage in the strike, into the retracting hub. That guy right there. You'll know it's going to work. You want to make sure that you have nice full retraction. Okay? And you'll know that it's going to work. Because if it doesn't, it will clearly fail on your testing of the lock. Step 7, we've demonstrated that. Installing the mounting plate, installing the inner rows, putting the knob down and on. And really the most important lesson that I can give is make sure that everything's connected. You don't want to leave the job site and have your client call you because they've literally just pulled the knob off because it wasn't seated all the way down. So be mindful of that. Step 8 is replacing the knob, sure. Changing the lock hand, step 9. That may or may not be a struggle for you, but I've demonstrated that you can put it together the wrong way in 2 different instances, or at least put it together the wrong way in one instance and then unintentionally put it back together the way it was, and then put it back together the proper way. So we've demonstrated that it can be done. Okay. Oh, forgive me. I said there wasn't a template. It's at the very bottom. There's your template. Be mindful of door edge. If you have a beveled edge door, the dimension from the... and I won't spend too much time on this at all. If that is a beveled edge door, that distance is going to be almost 1/8 of an inch from here down to here. The backside is measured from the center of the thickness of the door. So be mindful. You might need to compensate a little bit. I don't think you will with this lock because there's lots of tolerance. But I would certainly, if you're measuring on the high side or the pull side of the door, you're going to be too far over. Okay, so you're going to want to kind of compensate by just a little bit less than 1/16 of an inch. Okay, that template is there. I apologize. I didn't see it earlier. Finally, there is some information down below. Stainless steel finish, light duty commercial grade 3. It's an entry function. It's really an office function is what this is. An office function. It is an entrance function. Okay, let's start over. This is a triple function lock. This will act as a passage until you push the button in. Whenever you rotate the inside trim, it will unlock the back lock. Or if you push this and then turn it, if you'll notice, that tab is vertical. That identifier is vertical. Push it in and then turn it, it's no longer vertical. Every time that I turn the inside knob to leave, it keeps the outside locked. That's the entrance function. Okay. The problem is that that little area should be projecting from the push button. It's inserted, which kind of makes it a little bit funny to manipulate it. But it is an entrance function. They say that this is master keyed. Indeed, these locks are going to be shipped keyed differently. They will.
Okay, I found this on the web for what does Masticade and Visa Lottery to be shipped. Check it out.
They're listening. You can purchase a master key for this. They say that this is an SC4. That would really tell us that it is a 6-pin. This key is clearly 5-pin. It's a 5-pin length. I don't know if the cylinder will accept a 6-pin blank, but they indicate that it is SC4, which would mean in easy language that it is a 6-pin capable cylinder. But if you're running if you're expecting 6-pin cut keys, that's not what you're gonna get. What's interesting, though, is that I know that the master is a 6-pin blank, or a 6-pin key. Rekeyable, you can insert into this composite or generic cylinders from other manufacturers for other keyways. That can be done. Fits wood or metal doors, 1 3/8, 1 3/4. Internal mechanism, heavy gauge cold rolled steel. Yeah, it does seem like it's a good operating lock. Okay. Positive push and turn locking mechanism, we discovered that. 3-inch threaded rosette outside, so the diameter of the rose they're saying is 3-inch. Kind of gauge that there, I suppose. Panic-proof mechanism. What that means is that it has a deadlocking tab. When the latch is installed correctly and that tab is kept depressed, I can't push that all the way in. Or lloyding is the term, lloyding the latch. So your proper installation is going to look like that. Not that. That's improper. That's proper. Now I can't push that latch in. But like this, I can push it in all the way. Concealed mounting screws. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that plate is nice. You don't see any screws on the outside. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Ultra products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I am quite partial to Ultra, and it's because I believe in the value, the quality, the confluence of those requirements in their entire product line. You get a good lock for what they ask you to pay for it. If you are a commercial client, look at their exit devices, their door closers, and their lock sets. If you're a residential client, look at their cabinet hardware. I think there's really great value in those different product lines. If you have any questions on the Ultra 44128, grade 3 ball knob, or any other Ultra product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.